Proceeding further, let's change things up a bit with a panel discussion on the subject. Are you ready? Urban versus rural marketing, challenges to be mindful of. Do I have my panelists? Okay, great. Making your way up to stage. You're one of them. Fantastic. As we get everybody coming up. Okay, here they come. Fantastic. Given the varying demographics, differing interests, vocations, and often values, marketing products and services to both urban and rural communities can be quite daunting. We have a multidisciplinary panel of experts here with us who are going to highlight the issues and brainstorm solutions together. To lead the efforts of this discussion, I would like to welcome on stage our moderator, Keri Jaehnig, founder and CEO of Idea Girl Media. Please come on up. Let's hear it for her, our moderator.
Hi there. I'm going to welcome my other panelists. Carol Lawson. Ivy Stumper. Keri Jaehnig. Is this thing on? Asher, come on up. While they're getting seated, my name is Keri Jaehnig, and I am with Idea Girl Media. I am located in a small town between Cincinnati and Columbus, Ohio. So you would consider me potentially, we'll find out at the end of this panel discussion, you would consider me a rural candidate. I would be into the rural marketing sector, but don't conclude yet. Then what I'd like to do is, you should have mics on your table ready to go, and make sure they're working and on and so forth. And I'm going to give each a minute to introduce themselves and talk about what they do. But first, I'd like to ask a couple questions of the audience. Who here is in like a DIY position where you're handling marketing for your company? You might have several hats on, and yeah, you're doing it all. So I see maybe one or two hands. How many of you are, you own a company, you have a marketing team, someone handles that for you, and maybe you're here as one of those marketers? No hands, okay, there's one hand. Okay, and how many here are marketing experts? And you know all of your discipline in marketing and so forth? Okay, a couple of hands there in the back. All right, so we have a diverse audience, a diverse panel. And Keri, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about who you are, what you do, where you're located, and so forth.
All right, day 3, we all made it, yay. Yay, thank you, Asher. I'm Keri Jaehnig. I am president and founder of White Box Marketing. We are located in Minnesota, so very different weather than here. However, summer's lovely there. We have 2 offices, so our main office is actually an hour north of Minneapolis, and then we have another location in downtown Minneapolis. So a little bit of background about me. I came from national media, so I started my career more working for a national media company. Did that for about 15 years, and then went into the agency sector of life, worked for another ad firm for approximately 14 years. And long story short, one day I went to work and said, I have a solution. My solution is I buy you. So did that. I had about 3 weeks, landed that. Very happy to say our first year of business, we more than tripled our company, and we're doing great things. So we are an all-encompassing marketing firm. What does that mean? Really, the right hand speaks to the left hand. So we are a strategic partner where we're really aligning your goals, the why to what we want to accomplish, and developing a plan from that. We have a team of designers, content writers. We do digital as well as traditional means of marketing. So thanks for letting us be here. I think it's been an opportunity to meet some other brilliant minds that are in this industry, and I think collaboratively together we'll do great things.
Thanks, Keri. Asher, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, welcome to Days 3, and sorry I'm a first timer, I muffed up my mic already. But my name is Asher Stefani, and my business is called Ascendance Website Solutions, and we provide powerful yet simplified results-driven solutions for clients both locally, internationally, and nationally. And we offer web design for e-commerce and regular websites, and we also do a lot of SEO work. Those two are our bread and butter. And they go so well together. Anyhow, I love it. But we also offer social media and a bunch of other digital assets to make sure we cover the bases for whatever the client needs. We're very, very client-centric, and we don't have a bunch of offices like Keri does, so good on you there. Just two, okay. But we are very remote. We're all across the United States, great, solid team, and you know, we're branching out. COVID was a tough time for all of us, but in the web design world, it really kind of just blew up for everybody who does web design and marketing. And that really helped to, sorry, COVID sucked, but it really helped us to get to another level at this point. And really happy to be here. And the event's been great. MARsum's great. I've met some superstars here, some keynote speakers that have really done some amazing things. And networking's been great. I also tried to start a clothing line, so that's still in the works. COVID did not do well for that like it did for web design. But we're working on that still. I've got something up here. So anyhow, that's pretty much it, you guys.
Thanks, Asher. Carol?
So my name is Carol Lawson. I am the Chief Data Officer and one of the founding partners of MarketStorm AI. A lot of the conversation around marketing channels has been in the social channels. We don't do that. We don't do the websites. We don't do the SEO. We don't do a lot of the things that my counterparts do. We do ad placement everywhere else. What is different about my role is I am a data scientist, not a marketer. So what we will do is create custom algorithms to help place the ads for our clients. So not the third-party pick list stuff, but something that's very custom for our audiences. I work with artificial intelligence, with machine learning, and my personal area of expertise is in natural language processing and something called cultural resonance analysis, which is what words mean to us culturally, not necessarily how they're defined. And so we'll get into some of that, but that's who we are.
Abby.
So I'm a little different. I am actually a part of White Box Marketing as well, but I'm a designer there. So one of the lead designers, so I do a lot of that, but also being at a smaller agency, growing fast, we dip our toes in a lot of stuff. So I also do a lot with digital marketing, websites, SEO, Google Ads, all of that. So I really get to be a part of all of that within that smaller but growing agency in full service. I mean, we really do it all industries, all types of service. So that's me.
We have a pretty cool and diverse panel today. How I fit in is I'll start with the social media audit, and we'll work on social media management and marketing and also content creation. So we have a diverse set of disciplines here. And what was really cool about meeting these fine professionals this morning is we were able to have a discussion about urban and rural marketing, and I kind of want to put this together as an actual discussion so that you can gain insight from their natural flow of topic. I think it'll go well. So there were a couple of really neat things, and I think, Carol, if you could start off, you had mentioned that you worked with some really interesting folks and some interesting concepts, and talk about how that affects this topic of urban and rural marketing.
So, as I was saying, one of the my primary fields of study is in natural language processing, and what that is teaching the machine learning what our language means. And one of the things that we've discovered, that something that we humans have known all along, but we don't talk about a lot, is that words in our language, the way we use them culturally, means something completely different than the way they're defined. So, for example, you could say, that's hot, and it doesn't mean that's overly warm to the touch. You can say, oh, cool. That doesn't mean it's actually cold. there's a different meaning to those words culturally. And what we find is that there are different meanings to the same words in urban and rural settings. And so being mindful of how you use words and the words that you use and how those words are interpreted differently in the different cultural settings of urban and rural, in different cultural settings of age and demographics, is really important. There are a number of examples of huge mistakes, and I'm not going to talk about some of those, but some of the things to think about is don't jump on the train quite so quickly of the word of the day. Understand what that means to your audience before you start. And understand it's going to mean something different to maybe the audience here on this block and the audience on the block next door. And what do those things mean? But the use of language is really where we're focusing.
The use of language, that kind of blends in with what I used to do before I landed in this industry. I worked with global future leaders under the Department of State here in this country, and I had to be retrained and designated every year, mostly under Madeleine Albright and Colin Powell. But what that led me to is marketing these programs, the Flex and Yes Future Leaders programs, on online forums before they were even cool and called social media. And it was audience, and it was sometimes rural and sometimes urban, and it was on an international scale, not necessarily city or state or national or little town. But Keri and Asher and Abby, you all talked about audience and what that means and how we latch on. And so I'm going to give you a chance to just hop in as you will and talk about the things that we discussed this morning.
Being on the strategic side of things, I think it's, as we've talked a lot about this week, but really it's really starting with who is our audience, right? What do they look like? It used to be what are those demographics of age profiles, household incomes, geographic reach, those type of things. It's really changed a lot now. So now we're really diving into behavior. What does our audience look like? What do they behave? What do they like? How do they live, breathe, and communicate? For instance, I'll kind of bring it down to a tactical piece of it. We have a financial client. So this financial client in their strategic plan, we very much think strategy-wise how we target and communicate to their metro market audience as well as their locations that are in more rural settings. So their strategic plan is very much outlined. It's a comprehensive plan, but we very much segment that in that plan by market category. The reason for that is we can't promote and communicate in the same light that we are they have several locations, for their audience that are in more of the metro communities, because that's very different. Also the approach, the deliverables. What works for the metro market is, we're doing a lot of digital and things like that. What we found in their rural community locations is how they live and how they're communicating. Guess what? I know digital marketers are going to kill me, but print. In those communities, you know what, they love community papers. They're loyal to it. It fits how they're living and working. So if I only did a digital strategy for this client, we would miss a lot of their audience. So very much the messaging that we're creating also exudes and it speaks to that audience, the imagery, and I know, Abby, you're great to talk about that, but also the strategy that we're doing that and how we're communicating to them does need to change, different from a rural setting to an urban. And I think that client, for me specifically, their plan is very much developed for each of their locations and how we're going to tackle that.
So, and if I can jump in a little bit, when we were talking earlier, one of the really interesting things that you were bringing up and that I also see in the data is that culture isn't as cut and dry as it used to be. The culture of places are shifting as people are moving in and the demographics are changing. And so you had a really good example, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, sure. So like as an example, I'm passionately about my own company. We're very much into community and being a positive voice for that. But in the community that we live, for an example, we have a high change of immigrant population from Somalia. So very much from a local standpoint on that is, okay, clients from the local market, you need to switch your approach. Are you communicating to your audience are you including everybody? Are you representing the community in which you live and represent? So For instance, are you in a heavy Hispanic area? Are you in a heavy African American population? Also looking at, what we do too is that if we're in a heavy Hispanic area, we better have translation and be doing ads that are also not just in English. So I think just really looking at that footprint of who is your audience and making sure as marketers that we are pivoting and convincing our clients that they need to pivot to. And in rural settings or rurals, it's sometimes hard for them to grasp that change faster.
Indeed. Asher, if you could just talk about that from the website perspective or other things that you've noticed along the way.
Sure. Do you mind if I veer off for a quick second? Very quick.
Depends on where you want to go. But yeah,
It'll
go
be
ahead.
good.
This is a discussion.
We just need to liven the room up a tiny bit. I'm seeing a lot of cell phones and people I know it's lunchtime soon, guys, but do me a solid, just real quick. How many people out here know how to say the word rural? Rural. Anybody? Raise hands. How many people? All right, I see some. Say it with me, you guys. Say it. Come on. Tell me you can do it better than me. Rural.
Rural.
All right, well, I'll go slow. Rural. Beauty. Okay, thank you so much, guys. All right, we're awake now. We're awake.
Thank you, Asher.
All right, no more coffee for me. I apologize. Anyhow, I couldn't have said that any better than you did, so I'm just not going to repeat anything because you've already done that very well, and you too. So with my experience with rural and urban marketing, I'm going to take it to the international aspect at this point. It's a recent thing I'm still working on, and basically, we're doing a project in Canada. It's an off-road e-commerce website for aftermarket automotive parts to upgrade your vehicles and go off-road and have some fun. And with COVID happening right now, Canada is locked down. It's very tough, and it's becoming a permanent kind of work-from-home situation over there, and it's turning into a rural boom, where tons of people who used to live in the urban areas are now working from home and deciding to move to more rural areas where they can have more space and whatever and enjoy their time more while they still work from home. So while that's cool, I guess for them, it's also been tough for us because while we're doing a drop shipping business there, we are getting an influx of rural orders that we weren't expecting. And this has brought a bunch of different issues for us. The main one is getting the products to the customers in a timely fashion or at all in some cases, because a lot of couriers just simply don't deliver to these rural areas. And it's been interesting. So I've been calling all the couriers and trying to figure this out, and no competitors will reach back out to me. So that, whatever. But we've also seen, with the COVID happening and everybody working from home, a lot of these people in the rural areas now have people from urban areas, and the people that were in the rural areas are now learning how to be tech savvy. They're ordering stuff a lot more. Mm-hmm. So how do we create a strategy for this to where we can still reach them and reach both? So it's turned into we used to be able to do digital for urban. That's easy. Let's go. And then, it's not easy. Sorry. And then we would do more print and old-fashioned stuff for the rural areas, which definitely makes sense. And like you said, people get mad when you mention print and marketing, but yes, it works, especially in magazines. Yeah. But with off-road, for this example, these off-road guys love their magazines, and they get it religiously. They want to be involved with it. They want their vehicle in there. So, hey, we're putting ads in there and asking them to reach out to us, and we'll put them in there and highlight them. Anyhow, so it's just turned into a situation where you have to really balance, even in the rural areas, and really gather some data to see what you need to do and what your ratio is going to be, and where you're going to target, and who's actually in the rural areas now. It's been a very tricky experience for us, and I'm seeing a slight uptick of the same thing in the U.S. as well, on the U.S. side. So it's slowly going to be trickling over to us too. It's going to be very interesting, but that's kind of the challenges that we've been facing when it comes to rural and urban marketing.
And if I can riff off that just a little bit, one of the things I see a lot in data is our definitions of our market segments, like we might say this demographic is this and this demographic is that. Our demographic areas are becoming much more fluid. So for example, we used to be able to say, well, this is men at this age and women this age, and we're going to market to them differently. But the personal identity of what it is to be male or female is changing. The personal identity of what it means to be in a small town is changing. The personal identity of what it means to be at any particular age group is changing. So understanding that what we believed before about urban and rural settings and that we had our little rules, those things may not apply. And as we heard in these two examples, the world around us is changing. And it goes back to something that, that we commented on, all of us, is know your market. Don't make assumptions, but really know. How is it changing? Where is it going? Where is it going to be a year from now? Not just where was it a year ago? And that...
Exactly. If I might just add, we've heard words like case study, print marketing, the evolution over this past year. You know, so we're following, we're all experiencing the same things. We have to know our market, and it may sometimes be urban, it may sometimes be rural. But Ashley, I'm sorry, Abby. Did I get it right? Abby.
Abby. Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm just really nervous here.
There you go.
I want you to talk about, if you could, how you've approached some of the things regarding imagery, and then anything else that you'd like to add.
Yeah, so I mean, urban and rural, kind of like small towns, are kind of becoming more of a mixing pot. So you have those different divisions that you really have to cater that messaging to, or messaging, but then also that visuals. So those are just as important as the messaging. And it's interesting, you can come from one designer, they'll have a completely different look than another, but they're still catering to that same market. So you just have to really figure out and zone in on those types of what you're looking for, what you're advertising to, and who that is.
Okay.
So what's really interesting, and just listening to you talk, is that everybody wants to see themselves.
Yeah.
And then how do you, as the markets are changing, how do you keep current enough so that that changing market sees itself?
Yeah, I guess you just have to be aware of the changes. You have to, continuously research the area. Keri mentioned earlier, with our population in our city, the Somali, being more inclusive of that. Even if we're not recognizing that initially, you have to just reach out and really see that. So it's more of that responsibility on yourself in order to really communicate that to the greater whole.
Yeah. So there were a couple of projects that we talked about earlier today. I want to let you jump in how you will, but I know, Carol, you have a couple of cool things that you've worked on, Asher and Keri as well. But give me some of those recognizable names maybe that would appeal to the audience, and how you bridge some challenge.
So one of our clients is the Points of Light Foundation. And for those of you who are not familiar with Points of Light, it's a foundation that was started several years ago by George H.W. Bush after he left office. It used to be called the 1,000 Points of Light, and what they do is they go to big corporate donors, get them to give millions of dollars, and then the foundation itself will re-give that money to small local charities. And they also work to gain volunteers for those same groups. So the challenge that we've got is that because Points of Light is connected to George H.W. Bush, the liberal side of the world, who is very engaged in volunteerism, thinks that this organization is too conservative. The conservative side of the world, who thinks that that the social issues are uncomfortable, finds that same organization too liberal. So we had an interesting challenge in how we're going to market this conference that's coming up, a conference on volunteerism, by the way. Go out to pointsoflight.org. It's coming up July 13th. So if you're interested in volunteering in your community, there's my plug. But we had to actually change our language and change the way we marketed to be very discreet within pockets around states. We couldn't just say, well, Ohio, we're going to market this way, in California, we're going to market this way, in New York, we're going to market this way. We had to use the AI and the machine learning to choose which one of the messages are going to be most relevant to that person on the web at that moment, regardless of where they were. And in some ways, the AI itself was determining whether it was a rural voice or an urban voice or a conservative voice or a liberal voice that these people need to have. And it just demonstrated to us how much the world is changing. And even in some of the areas that you may think would be conservative, they're not as much anymore because of just the same thing you've been talking about, people moving and going to small towns because they can telecommute now. Telecommute, that's an old word, but you know what I mean. But so the world around us is changing. The rules that we thought applied no longer really apply. They're guidelines. But discovering what's going on in each individual community and even down to a more sub-community level is really important if we're going to reach the customers we want to reach.
So, challenge that we think might help the audience insight, challenges and insight from projects that we can get to our audience. I don't walk around with a mic all day usually. So.
I was just going to piggyback a little bit of what Carol was talking about, and we kind of talked about this already, but I really think it's important for us to look not only at the raw data of these communities and what that's changed, but with COVID too, things are changing again. So we're always having to pivot and look at that. So the raw data, but really getting into like the behavior piece of that. What value system does this audience have? What's important to them? It's not just hard fact data anymore, though we need that data for sure. But also the value system, that behavioral piece. COVID has been an interesting thing. Like in a lot of metro communities, people in metro communities are moving out of metro areas. Particularly, I'll say in Minneapolis, in our area, we didn't make the map the best this last year, let's be honest. So because of that, we're seeing a lot of people out of the metro area actually moving out further into suburbs and stuff like that. So again, the population in some of those rural areas is changing again. So as marketers, we got to stay abreast of that and keep up into, again, what does that demographic look like in each of these areas?
So a little bit of the how of that is, and you mentioned behavioral targeting, which is really important. So you target based upon people's behaviors rather than based upon the slots that they would fit in. The other area of targeting, which is fairly new, which I encourage everybody to really delve into, is contextual targeting. So targeting because someone is reading something in this context. Many of the platforms allow you to do that. It is an emerging area, but understanding behavior and context are going to make a difference. And that's the same like with the images that you were talking about, is finding the ones that are
Yeah, the most representative, I guess. Yeah, for sure. And even kind of going along with the cultural, at our agency, we value bringing together the communities, whether it be urban or rural or whatever. But just an example, at our agency recently, we put up a mural, and it says, "Do good together." So it's combining those two, whether it be one community or the other, we're all coming together as one. So it's just bringing those messages and really reflecting that with our beliefs.
Esther, what can you add to that conversation from the website perspective, perhaps? While he's doing that, my market or my clients are global. We have an international client base. So we're constantly thinking of both the urban and the rural. And what I think I heard them talking about is you have to know your customer, but you have to know what their interests are. And it's all about the customer from our perspective at Idea Girl Media. So Asher, you ready? Okay.
Yes, I think so. Okay, it works. Sorry. Man, technical difficulties. Teamwork. Thank you so much. So I guess I'll kind of go back to knowing your audience and give an example of another company I worked with. This will be more of kind of starts as an urban marketing thing, and how do we increase that, and then ends up being, well, now shoot, we need to get the rural side too. So anyhow, so this company hired me a while back, and not a while back, but you know, it's been COVID, whatever. And they're an aftermarket automotive company, and they do this really cool thing that makes your car, the wheels stand out, right? So when I got there, they were kind of just stuck at a baseline and didn't know what to do. $3.5 million a year, something like that. And looking at it, I got in there and started looking at data and looking what they had, and it was a load of shit. So it was quite a little step we had to start taking. So they were doing the right stuff. They have the licensing with the different automotive manufacturers, and they were doing that. So they had, okay, well, now we can add the engravings on there, and we can have these standard colors and whatever. So we're like, well, we need to do something else then if you guys want to make some more money with these in the urban market. And that's really where the audience should be at this point. It's a flashy kind of thing, right? So we turned it into a configurator where the customer could go on the website and start customizing their own product, how they wanted it. We added more colors in, not overkill where you have a zillion options and it's too much and people will get turned away from it, but just enough. They started with like 6 colors and we turned it into about 24, and we categorized it in different tabs. And then we started adding more engravings that were more relevant with the urban market, stuff from movies that we kind of changed just enough that it wouldn't get us sued, and stuff like that. And after 1 month of having that, sales went from like 30 grand a month on the website to over 100, right? So we're like, how do we expand on this, right? So from there, we were like, okay, we got this down, what can we do next? So we added a paint match option where you put your VIN number in and it will literally match your car so that everything on your wheels would match and it looks all cool and spunky, and all these young kids are like, yeah, I want that shit on my car, excuse my language. But that's just kind of how it went, you know? We were getting all these crazy social media posts like with lots of cuss words and I love it and all that stuff, and show my pictures and, you know, and blah, blah. It turned into this great thing. And we also started kind of getting some social media response from kind of the older group in rural areas saying, what the hell is this? And it's like, well, maybe we have something here. Let's tell them what it is, right? So we don't really reach them as much on social. So we ended up taking that to, the website sales eventually went up way over 150 a month, and it kept going, and it was great. And it was working really well at the same time with what we were doing with all of the resellers that we were working with. So sales overall just kept going up and up. So we're like, we need to attack the rural market now too. So from there, we ended up changing strategy a little bit, and even changing our slogan from something flashy and make your car stand out to the finishing touch, you know, for the older class in the rural areas that were like, oh, I love my car, I've worked so hard for this car, or whatever, I need the finishing touch. We veered off and completely went into print, and we ended up doing some really good stuff in a bunch of automotive magazines, and then we took it a step further and got featured on a couple really popular TV shows that is automotive completely. One of them was called Truck You, for the record. Yeah. Sorry, I'm done. That's the last one, I swear. That's it. We're in the automotive industry. This is all we do. But anyhow, so it turned out really well, and the sales just kept going up. We were able to, at that point, kind of capitalize on both markets and just keep going from there based on the results we were getting from the analytics and the data. And even with the print was a little hard, but you get a coupon code in there and you can start seeing who's actually using it. Simple stuff, but it goes a long way.
Just wanted to tie one thing that I think from a content piece of it, as we're talking about deliverables and stuff too. So what we have found, obviously, in our rural settings for these clients that we're communicating to them, I'm going to take this financial client that we have. The messaging of that has to change, which we know is that what they value in those communities is time efficiency. I don't have a lot of time, so what we got to make sure that we're communicating, and that strategy plan for those areas is quick things. They have a couple seconds. They want to know how you're going to make their lives better in a very short period of time. In the rural settings, loyalty is a big deal. So they are brand loyal. They want to know more like the why about your organization, more of that. In the urban settings, don't care. So what are you going to do for me? And I got this many seconds to capture that audience versus the strategy in the rural area. I got to have more content in there because they want to know much more of that why and have that warm feeling because they're much more brand loyal.
Nice work.
Can I add one more thing to what I was saying earlier? I'm glad you said that. It reminded me of something. So real quick, I know we did the print and stuff to really reach the rural market, but we also we had to do it on the website end too. We were adding engravings for the urban areas, so we had to add some more fun stuff that would really resonate with the audience in the rural areas. And so we added stuff like "Don't Tread on Me." We added, we're able to do military stuff on there as well, some of the more patriotic type stuff. And it really kind of hit the boom with that. And it was really fun to watch and see how both would grow and who was picking what, where they were from. The analytics was just fun to watch. I don't seem like a nerd, but man, you throw some data in front of me and I'll look at it and have some fun with it. But anyhow, I just wanted to add that part on because I forgot about it earlier, my bad.
Good deal. Did we leave anything out, Keri? You kind of looked like you were going to pick up your microphone.
Oh, no, I was just saying cool about the data.
Yeah, there's that word data. Some people like it and some people don't. So.
All data is good data.
From where I sit, we're always talking about social media and how that is a big part of marketing these days. But here on the panel, I heard that it's not always the big part of what's happening. We have print and we have TV and other forms of marketing and things that come together with the marketing that make a difference. And we have a pretty diverse, stellar panel here. We did talk about how social media channels are changing. And as popular as they may have been, or may be, or may seem to be today, it may not always be the case. So can we just kind of bring our conversation in a little bit before we have to go and talk about that?
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. As our identities are becoming more fluid, we're also finding, the collective we across the US, are finding places that feel more comfortable to us. Instead of just being on Facebook, we now have TikTok and start down the list, and there's a bunch of other social that are more focused toward who we believe ourselves to be. One of the things that we talked about too is the declining trust in social media and media in general, which is moving people away from it. One of the very interesting things in the data that I'm seeing is that whereas several years ago we used to say it took 7 touches for someone to interact with your brand, well, the most recent data I've seen shows it takes 20 touches. 20 touches.
20.
And they can't all come from the same thing. So we have a greater challenge ahead of us if we're going to continue to communicate. I think we're going to see a decline in the major platforms, and I think that it's going to become more important to do advertising across the rest of the web outside of those social platforms. That is the area that we focus on. We don't do the websites and the social, but you can't just say, well, I'm going to do this and not that. It's not an either or. Because of those 20 touches, you have to have a combined strategy that covers all of those touch points, all of those areas. You've got to be good at the SEO. You've got to be good at the website. You've got to be good at the social. You've got to figure out if there are opportunities in print or in other kinds of media like video or audio. And you've got to think about what's going on in the rest of the web, because we as a culture are no longer just gravitating to what we're supposed to be. We're gravitating more to what we believe ourselves to be. And that's a good thing, but it also makes it a little bit more difficult for us as marketers.
And even going off that, there's so many social platforms out there now. So it used to be just the normal like Instagram, Facebook, like those, you could reuse a lot of the assets that for one for another, but now you got the TikToks, all the live streaming, so you really are making a lot of more content, a lot more visuals to cater to all those different audiences that are on all those different platforms.
Good job. Asher, please.
Oh, sorry. I just left it on this time. I'm not playing around with it anymore. Real quick to add on to that, yeah, so many social platforms now. They just keep coming out more and more. And with all the negative viewing of the media in general at this point, it's really turning into quite a different situation. And when it comes to rural and urban, you know, it's maybe not location even at this point. It could be your political view based on whatever. But we're having a lot more conservative type platforms as well, like Rumble, and there's another one I can't think of the darn name, Parler and Telegram, you know, and these things. And what is your audience? You know, it's time to start trying those as well and see if it works and test it out, because you know, like she said, and I agree, data queen over here. Literally, these big ones are going to start going down, and it's going to be more of a flat line, and I think it's going to be pretty awesome, in my opinion, and offer a lot more solutions for us to test out and see how it goes. And you can send her all the data.
We've noticed some new platforms becoming more popular and people testing them out, and they're sticking around. So interesting. Keri, final thought?
Let's see, final thought was I think it's just know your audience, right? And I went back to when I was up here a few days ago. I'm a big advocate for the why. Why are we doing this? What's our goal? What is the why? as we're all pivoting in this thing, it is knowing your audience, and it's not even just knowing who that audience is, but really kind of getting into that behavioral thing, and then making sure that we're communicating them in deliverable ways that also that we're reaching them. So looking at defining that audience, like I said before, is the value system for each of these communities is changing, and as marketers, we need to make sure that we are promoting our clients' product best with that strategy.
Any other final thoughts?
I'll jump onto that real quick. Knowing your audience is the number one thing when it comes to marketing. It comes first, and if you don't do that, then you're gonna basically fail at the end of the day. And it's like reaching into a freaking thing of fish trying to grab one and hope for the best. It's not gonna work. I had a point here. Shoot. Anyhow, knowing your audience though, one thing, don't be afraid to test something out and think outside the box and get creative. I think Abby will be able to speak on that with her creative aspect, but have some fun with it. Know your audience. If you know, like back to the automotive example, urban audience, they have some vanity. This car guys, they want the best car. They want everybody turning their heads. So how do you communicate with them and show them, hey, you are the best, blah, blah. Get them with your brand, start interacting with them, and then start focusing on them, and that's how you get more retention. That's how you get them to start talking more. And, you feature them in the magazine that you have or on your website, your blog, whatever it is. Get creative, have some fun with it, interact with your audience, and you will learn even more about them.
Mm-hmm. Final thought, Carolyn, Abby?
So the last thing I would say is test your assumptions. A lot of us have been doing this for a long time, and we think that we know because we've always done it. But everything that we assumed last year or the year before may not be as accurate today as it was last year or the year before. So test your assumptions about your audience. Assume that you don't know. Do some investigation and see how the things around you are changing.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. Abby?
Yeah, so with the visuals and everything, kind of like Asher was saying, like those creatives, you have fun with it. I mean, the worst that'll happen, it fails, you try something new, base it off the data, but that, it can only go so far. Human connection and just being out there, getting those relationships, those are really where it's gonna tell you, hey, it's working, hey, it's not. So just a combination of data, having fun, getting out there.
And mine is know your customer, but also know where they hang out online. We work on that through the social media audit. We just perfected our formula on that. So some interesting, fun times that we have coming forward for us in that realm. Keri, where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Well, you'll find me on LinkedIn. A lot of you, thank you. I've met a lot of new friends this week. It's been super fun. So again, I'm with Whitebox Marketing, and you can find us at whitebox.marketing. We're at .marketingno.com.
Awesome. Asher, where can they find you?
Right outside in the hall after this. Anybody wants to chat? But seriously, LinkedIn is probably a great, easy way to do it as well. There's not many Asher Stefanis out there, so I think you'll be able to find me pretty quick.
Awesome.
We're at Ascendant's website, solutions.com, or info at what I just said. I'm not going to repeat it for you. It's a mouthful. And definitely come and chat. I'd love to network with all of you guys. Everybody here is a stud and a superstar. So let's keep pioneering through this and having some fun with it.
Okay, Carol.
So you can find us at marketstorm.ai, and you can also find me on LinkedIn, but it will probably be under the Craft Wine Association, which is a whole nother story if you want to hear it.
Thank you. And Abby?
Also under whitebox.marketing, but also on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Find me wherever. My name is ABBEY. Sometimes that throws people off, not just a Y or something.
Okay, and I'm Keri Jaehnig. You'll find me at ideagirlmedia.com, or on Twitter and Instagram, it's at ideagirlmedia. Right now, I'd like to open it up for Q&A. I know we did have a question out in the audience. I think they want you to step to the microphone in the center, and we're happy to answer them for you.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for all the insights. I had a question. How have you seen rural and urban marketing affected with the pandemic-driven mass migration of people, mainly moving outside of cities, but also short-term moving from state to state? And do you think that that's going to be a permanent change, or do you think we're going to revert back to pre-pandemic splits?
What do we think?
So I think that this is going to be a permanent change. I don't think that the people who are moving out and finding a life that they love are going to give that up and go back to the urban grind. I think that it's going to change the culture of the communities. I think that there's still going to be pockets of urban leaning and rural leaning the way we used to understand it. But I think they're going to be mixed in the communities a little bit more than they are even today.
I think it's been interesting to see like big organizations like the Amazons in the world and stuff who are all been like talking about real estate, these big giant real estate things. It's going to be changing. So just space-wise, more companies are going cost efficiency. I can have this whole department work at home. I don't need this giant square footage anymore. So I think there's going to be an interesting change that we're just seeing in operations of large businesses that I think are predominantly right in urban settings. So that change in the Minneapolis market, very much so too, of people are more, because of COVID, and we've kind of tested this new lifestyle, and then companies have tested new operations and looking at cost efficiencies, things like that. Yeah, I do think that that's going to change very much so, and I think that people also working at home, they got to test a little bit of a new lifestyle, right? Some people had to pause and slow down a little bit and enjoyed that piece of that. So I think seeing a little bit of that of people moving out because they don't need to be close to the office anymore. So again, going to all that we spoke about, but knowing that audience, and we got to keep up with that as marketers and making sure that we're knowing kind of where that trend is going, so we're reaching our audience that way too.
So there's also some interesting pockets too. You think of Apple as a technology company that they've really facilitated a lot of the work from home, but they are beginning to require their employees to come back to the office. And the reason that they want them to come back is because they need the creative synergy. So I think you're going to see some of that too. And it's interesting, a lot of the engineering, hardcore engineering folks are not being required to come back, but the designers are.
I do like what you're saying, Carol. I think it's going to be departments. So like the giant organizations of like these departments from a cost efficiency thing don't need to, but these departments that need collaboration. And I hope that really in business, I think business ideally is best when there is collaboration. And personally, it kind of scares me if everybody's just in their own little corners and somehow we're making these businesses really successful and we're not communicating and collaborating. That's a whole nother topic, so I'll leave that one off.
As a creative mind too, just having those couple months outside, not being able to have that face-to-face interactions, it really did affect it. I mean, it was tough. Like, you still have those Zoom calls and all of that, but it's not the same as all gathering on a whiteboard or taking out your sticky notes and whatever. So there is a piece of that, I definitely think, in the creative field that'll definitely carry through.
I've definitely been seeing more on hybrid settings, on work and collaboration and office and so forth. So I think we're going to start hearing more and more about that too. Any other questions or final thoughts? Or okay, I really hope that you got some good value out of this session. We certainly did. I'm sorry, did I miss one? I think they want you to go to the center at the microphone. I'm sorry, I have a glare on my glasses, so please forgive.
Yeah, everybody says that. And you don't really understand how bright these lights are until you're sitting here. It's like, oh my gosh, these lights are bright.
So I work with franchises that have locations all across the U.S., and we find that developing marketing plans for an individual franchise differs compared to where they are in the U.S. Great example, we have an acai location down in Florida, absolutely kills it. Opens up in Texas, we develop the same campaign, launch it, it does horrible.
Right.
How do you assess an area to know how much the consumers actually know the product before you launch the marketing campaign? So when you assess an area, how much do they actually know the acai, how much do they know the product, and how do you assess the people in that area, and what do you use to find out if they know what the product is before you launch the campaign?
Good question.
So with something that detailed and that technical, I would go to a company who does that. It would be very difficult to do that on your own. For myself, I would dig into my tool sets. I would run scenarios using the AI and the machine learning and compare them region to region to see what the sentiment analysis look like, what the recognition levels look like. There's a lot of different indicators that you can use, but I think you're right to not assume that one location is going to be the same as another location. Maybe you've got easier ways to do it. I always go to my data, so.
I was going to say this is a data queen answer here, but for I guess a more simple aspect of it is just doing some kind of research, doing some competitor research. Look at is there any other acai, so that's rural acai, whatever, any other locations in that area? What are the reviews like? What are customers saying about that brand? Anything you can get from that to gauge and see what you can do to make it work. Just doing some research. Surveys too. You can do some paid surveys. Push those out and see how the audience responds in that zip code or wherever it's locally going to be. Those are a couple quick, simple things that you could do on your own before you jump and really get into the meat with the data.
Absolutely do them on your own. Pew Research is also a good resource that you might, those that don't know of it, check and see what's there as well. Okay, one last, any other questions? Okay, we hope that you got some good value. I hope you're all prepared to make 20 touches to prospective clients. Who's prepared? Raise your hand. 20? Okay. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you.
You've been awesome. Have a great rest of the conference, and let's go eat lunch.